Hi, everybody. So how do you feel? I hope you still have some energy after all these great speakers. I'm really, really happy today to moderate the panel, which is dedicated to how corporates can leverage blockchain on their innovation journey. And with us today, we have Bibop Gresta from Hyperloop TT. Wow. Yeah. You're supposed to arrive with Hyperloop, maybe. Maja Vujinovic from our group. We also have Tristan Thoma from Next Americas. And Philippe Honigman from Tribute.
Check. The rail corporation tried to kill me.
Okay, so to start the discussion, Mazel tov.
What's happening in Paris?
Okay. So,
to be worried.
maybe my first question, and maybe that's for you, Bibop. What are the typical challenges that let's say the pain points that corporates face in their innovation journey that can or that could be solved through the blockchain?
Whoa, where do you want to start? Do you have 3 hours? The entire society should be redesigned. So there's a lot of issue that we have as a humanity. I think the biggest thing I see right now is the price of things. And I risk to repeat myself for the one that were at the previous conference. How many were at the Ministry of Finance conference? Nobody? Oh, okay, so I can say the same things. It's amazing. No. So the biggest problem we have right now is that the way we build our economy is based on values. They are completely screwed up. We are based our economy of unlimited resources in a planet that has limited resources. And we are pricing things in a wrong way. If you look at how we are pricing a travel, for example, when we are looking at a travel by car, for example, you're looking maybe at some consumption of the fuel, some amortization of the car, and some insurance, right? But it is the right price of that travel? Not. Who's taking in consideration how much does it cost in terms of carbon footprint? How much does it cost in terms of pollution? The health issues that we are creating with this car. And how much does it cost to dismantle that car when it's not in use anymore? We are paying that cost in terms of taxpayers' money and all the other stuff that it's embedded in our beautiful society. Well, I don't think it's fair, because we will have a different society if we are able to measure this kind of values. They are intrinsic to the things that we are creating. So the blockchain, I think, has the incredible opportunity to actually have the possibility to finally embed in the smart contract all these factors that we can all of a sudden measure. We can even give it a value, not only economically, and eventually exchange it, trade it, or even forbid it. And that's the beautiful promise of the blockchain, redesign our life based on different values also that we can introduce with society. Sometimes they are abstract concepts, but we are very good in imagination as a humanity. We think that the bullshit that we are exchanging is money, for example. So if we have this kind of imagination, we can actually create a society that maybe label things and give it the right value. And this is the biggest promise.
And Maja, if I can get your views, what are the specific challenges that must be addressed by innovation teams when it comes to tackling some blockchain projects? What is really specific to blockchain?
Yeah, Thanks for that. And I'm very glad to be here. I love Paris. And so just a quick background on me so you get a little bit of a sense. I've been in payment space since early 2000s in Africa. I led a group of hackers doing mobile tech and got into Bitcoin in 2011. And 2013 have started to work in blockchain technology. I was the CIO at Emerging Technologies at General Electric. I led General Electric's emerging tech globally. So I brought them the concept of blockchain, although I've been part of Satoshi's Roundtable for a while and really doing tons of pilots in the space, hands-on, building be it token structures and smart contracts to seeing how potentially distributed ledger could impact our IoT industry and everything else. So I have my own definition of blockchain, which I think is really important. I think previous panel, if you were here, really nailed it. Some of those guys I've known for a long time, really smart. Blockchain is not a technology. It's a forcing mechanism to change processes. And so when people talk about blockchain, that it can solve everything, including your marital issues, it's BS. So blockchains currently don't work. I think what the way innovation, and to answer your question now, what I've seen at GE, specifically when I brought it in 2014, they dismissed it right away. Cultural reasons, status quo reasons, I don't want to change reasons, and also this doesn't work reasons, which is very relevant.
Compliance reasons as well?
Compliance reasons. Actually, I was quite known for having an idea of using airline engines. When large industrials test them, they produce a lot of electricity. They have to ground that electricity. And so I wanted to use that electricity, mine Bitcoin, and then pay for the whole aviation division. So I went in front of FAA and CEO of aviation at GE, and it was a compliance issue. They couldn't touch it because of a compliance issue. So I think also a lot of folks that are in innovation positions in these companies are thinking just basics, which I think you keep hearing on a lot of these conferences. It's very surfaced. Let's just bring in the new sexy word because it's a new sexy word and because everybody else says it will solve something. But in reality is blockchain has no usage unless there are parties that don't trust each other. Smart contracts do, for synthetic products, for trading, for many other things. But in reality, we need a real use case for it to actually be relevant. So there are many more examples, but I'll get into them later.
Maybe Tristan, you want to add some other examples or your views on that?
Absolutely. I think that it's an interesting process for corporations to try to implement blockchain because, as Maja said, it is not often or not always a technical function. It's often an ancillary function of incentive structure, of relationships between entities, of trust, that when people say blockchain, they synonymize it to trust. And a lot of the times, existing technologies actually aren't broken enough to necessitate the investment in time, in technology, in development, and even really business model, an economic model behind the business, that it would necessitate a blockchain. So I think that it's really, as opposed to, we hear it at the conferences and in everyday conversation all the time, instead of finding a solution to a problem, it's really, instead of chipping away at what can blockchain be used for, it's chipping away at what systems are broken in the incentive structure that this particular solution can be found. And that it's a very limited number of actual solutions, and I think that's what we're in the process of defining.
And maybe from your background, any specific, illustration on how innovation teams were very great at, tackling all those challenges?
Sure, absolutely. So a little bit of background on myself. I am a director of strategy at Diginex Americas. I've spent the past 2.5 years, a little over, creating, designing implementation strategy for blockchain systems in corporates and startups. Worked on several white papers in the crypto time, as well as creating smart contract infrastructures. As Maja mentioned, smart contracts can be used immediately in a technical framework. I actually created or designed a smart contract framework for a large reinsurance company that used data inputs from satellites to execute via smart contract remittances and payments to farmers for drought insurance. And it wasn't a sexy token. It wasn't a big marketing ploy. It really was a back-end efficiency smart contract system that allowed technology to just really streamline a lot of the processes and take away some of the unnecessary ones.
Philippe, maybe you can give us, because I don't know if everyone knows Tribute, so I think it would be good for you just to explain what you've been doing and what's your views on how those challenges must be really addressed by the innovation teams.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so the project I'm working on is called Tribute. We're building a new financial instrument in order to share value across ecosystems. So it can be between a corporate and many stakeholders that are traditionally not accessing the value produced by the company. It's kind of stock option on the blockchain, if you want. And with respect to your question regarding the innovation journey, well, I would quite agree with what has been said regarding blockchain as a technology or so-called technology. If it's a technology, it's just technology. So it's in itself, you cannot innovate with blockchain. You can innovate with trust, though. So I believe that it can open up a new way to create trust between loosely coupled stakeholders, parties to a system. When there's a lack of trust, not because people are opposed to each other, but when people don't know each other or when companies don't have the same interest, then this is really the scope where you can use blockchain in order to create a consensus. So back to corporate, if there is a direction in terms of innovation, I would think more about what can you do, what can we do in order to use new vehicle of trust between the corporate and external stakeholders, like, for instance, partners, suppliers, users, customers, influencers, anyone outside of the staff and the traditional internal stakeholder of the company.
If I can, Pauline, jump in there. That's a great example where, for example, GE struggled. Because if you look at some of the entrepreneurs in the room and some of the folks earlier that were on stage, we would bring them in to showcase what they were doing. But on the other side, you have a traditional IT stack and a head of digital IT, and then you've got salespeople who have been running same sales cycle for a long time for that particular industry. And just educating them on technology that's nascent, right? That's not even, I think Pavel mentioned earlier from Distributed Labs, just even having some flexible APIs to make this work would be great, where they don't have to think about what this actually is. But that doesn't exist, right? And so it's really tough. We invested in O Group, we invested over 25 companies in the space, and it's really hard to get them to speak the same language as the folks who are 50 plus in these organizations, who run the same business the same way and are pressured by quarterly reportings, right? So it's a challenging environment to do that in.
So should the innovation team operate in a different way? Because you could say that for other topic like digitalization, you talk about API, you need to educate, you need to blah, 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 you need to work with startups and so on. So what is it that is really specific in terms of, how you should operate in an innovation team?
I think that you need to be able to translate the real world into the technology world. And sometimes what we have seen in the last 2 years was trying to invent a problem and then try to find a solution. That is the worst case scenario, where you actually create, you solve a problem that doesn't exist, okay? The first thing you need to see if the problem...
We call that here the gadget use cases,
Right. So, and we have seen a lot of these ICOs, right? Where, you're looking at the white paper and say, well, why do I need that, right? So the real challenge is to actually identify first the problem, look at other solution, and then see if the blockchain eventually improve this solution, or they are not other ways to fix the problem in a simpler way. Because, you know, technician loves to complicate. I have a specific office of complication of simple things in my company. And I put all the people that wants to do that.
I think there's another reality to that, which is the fear of losing jobs in these large corporates. I mean, a lot of these folks, when we in order to innovate, because I wasn't a typical corporate, I came from an entrepreneurial background in Africa and Latin America, so I had a very different mentality. But you should have seen the faces when I said, hey, we should totally run a different innovation and pilot these in a different way, right? It was no, because they realized that accounting, engineering, a lot of jobs will simply start to go away. So people start to really close off and protect their positions. It's fascinating. And I think we are running into this, not just because of blockchain, but machine learning. I mean, everything, all the buzzwords out there, right? So we started a thing called Future Work at GE when I was there. It was an initiative where I wanted to retrain the whole employees on a certain tools that would be coming in for next 2 to 5 years.
Yeah. So luckily enough, my company created a model that is unique as a model of company, because from the inception, we were able to put together the largest amount of scientists in a for-pay project that is actually crowdsourced. So we have more than 900 people working for 42 countries, single individuals, and more than 52 companies. They are contributing in exchange of stock options. So in a way, we tokenized the concept of work since the inception of the company in 2013. Now we're starting to look at eventually transform this into a real tokenization. But my company has been receiving 70,000 skilled engineering hours since the inception, plus 20,000 of skilled engineering in the development of the capsule. And this is the first and unique model that allowed us to a little bit overcome this kind of project, because we have a small team of plus or minus 7 people plus or minus 2, that works on sprints of 4 weeks. And then we have anonymous validation team that validates their job. And it's a new form. Harvard just wrote a case study on us, and they're teaching us since September.
Yeah, so maybe it comes to next question with regard to the skills. And you started to answer the question, but maybe for Maja, Tristan, and Philippe, what are your views on the critical skills that are really necessary for a blockchain case to really be live and not only to be a proof of concept? And can those skills be found within the corporates, outside? Are there mixed models? What are your views on, you know, skills and having a blockchain project being really live and successful, of course?
So obviously there are technical skills specific to blockchain and crypto environment.
But not only, right?
Yeah, not only, of course. That's kind of obvious. There is also all this field of token engineering, if there is a need for tokenomics, cryptoeconomics, that kind of stuff. But back to this...
This should be within the company, or you think it should be found outside the company?
There's a need for both, right? There's a need to be supported and guided by people who have more experience, and there's still a little bit of lack of resources internally, so I guess but there's need to be a ramp up inside corporates, obviously. But there's as well a need for, I believe, back to this cultural mindset shift, there is a need to understand how to design in a way that is including external stakeholder, as I was saying, and not you seeing always like we do in a traditional business environment in a very hierarchical and centralized way. So it requires some skills and knowledge and practices that are actually not that new. And I think that there's a lot of learning that can be extracted from what has been developed over the past couple of decades in marketplaces, platforms, sharing economy. It's more centralized than DAOs or, you know, the new form of organization that are totally decentralized that we want to build with blockchain. But there is the thinking around building an ecosystem and understanding each stakeholder and what are the incentives, what role do they play. And there are even approaches like Platform Design Toolkit, for instance, to that end. So I think that there's a lot of skills and knowledge to be found, including in an innovation team that are probably more informed about the threat of the platform and the practices of the platform than what is really emerging with the blockchain initiatives.
So we found, you actually mentioned it, the incentive structure, and I think that's one of the largest changes that has to happen for a business to incorporate blockchain, is the incentive structures. If you're just doing it within your company, use a database. Don't blockchain the world. If you are interacting with other stakeholders, it is crucial that you understand the incentive structure of those stakeholders to such an extent that you're almost in their shoes. And for a lot of corporates, or for some corporates, it's possible. For many, it's not. It's just very difficult to get outside of my own head, to get outside of my own business. For instance, a lot of corporates famously put $10 million into a new product or system and do very minimal market research as they're in that process. Particularly with blockchain systems, propose the system, find out immediately who the stakeholders are, what their incentives are, what the heck they want, and why this blockchain product would actually be relevant to them. At Diginex, we've created an interesting product that leverages pre-competitive collaboration. So on a base level of fighting modern slavery, we actually had a presentation on it a little earlier. We have a product that we've deployed in collaboration with NGOs, in collaboration with, it's called the Mekong Club, which is a coalition, brings together companies that all want to fight modern slavery. All effectively competitors, but have this pre-competitive collaboration for the same common goal. And in this specific instance, it helps to share data. It helps to use a blockchain system. The incentive is there for the workers, for the NGOs, for the companies, for the regulators, and it works in that specific instance. And that's yeah.
I'll do it quickly because I know we're out of time, but you really inspired me to talk about something I give talks on, which is you can't talk about blockchain without really talking about philosophical place where our society is in. And I think I'll link it to something interesting. I don't know how many of you saw Lyft IPO, right? Not many. Wow, 3 of you? Shame, right? Do you think that Lyft contributes to society? Wow, interesting. I thought so as well. Because on this note that I read, which is one of the things that you just brought up, Philippe, this whole kind of sharing economy and this, fractional ownership now everybody's talking about, right? But when companies like that, who have created these new platforms, make it seem like that everybody has a job and doing their own thing, and it's illusionary. Once they go IPO, who's made the money? Not the drivers. Quite opposite, actually. And so I think I challenge particularly core group of people, some of them are in here, that have been part of Satoshi's roundtable with me for a long time, that have been core, Bitcoin development core, Ethereum development core, a number of these smart minds who have been creating this. I challenge us to really think about what we're creating in the future. So that incentive structure, it is so core, it's almost like a beating heart. Can actually, at the end of the day, can you create something where new businesses redesigned where everybody benefits, right? However, though, if you look at some industries, if it's aviation, right? If I try to decentralize that at the moment, certain parts of aviation, at the current stage of technology, I would literally have planes falling out of sky because it doesn't work, right? So I need the centralized system where I can trust and blame somebody if shit goes wrong, right? So I think we've got to be careful, and again, I keep referring to the last panel because I love those guys, and they nailed it, really. I think I just would encourage us to think deeply than just slap a blockchain anywhere to make whatever you're doing more efficient.
So other skills at the end that are needed in the innovation team, just to be able to have a philosophic view of what the blockchain can really solve as a problem. We have in the room some corporates that are not so advanced. Some are really advanced, but some are not. And I know they are struggling. You know, the innovation teams are struggling just to show that this is a topic that should be on the agenda. So they are trying to educate the EXCO members, but you know they're like struggling to do it. What advice would you give, Maja, from your experience, for those companies that are not, you know, so well in the blockchain ecosystem? How would you think they should tackle the topic?
I'd say if you're sitting in an innovation seat, everybody's replaceable. So don't think that, listen, if you brought an entrepreneur from the outside that is really smart, and I think to Bibop's point, right, if it's a tech and they're trying to shove the tech down your throat, right, ask questions, incorporate it, see what can be fitting, but listen, right, they're there for a reason. Really start thinking where you can put your foot on the ground. You have a job for a reason. Don't just be complacent. So I would say just grow some balls.
So one advice I can tell to this imaginary head of innovation is to look at reality and try not to predict the future, but to create a better one. When we look at the Hyperloop, for example, we try to look at the real problem that we are trying to solve. When you have an opportunity to actually push the reset button to a system and reinvent it from scratch, you have a dramatic opportunity to actually improve the life of the people. Transportation sucks. You see the travel, and we are clustered in things that are completely alien from what is the things that we need. Even the concept of passenger is wrong, you know. The cluster as in first class, second class, it doesn't mean anything. What does it mean? When you're going to work, you need something different than when you're coming back to work. When you're traveling with your wife, you need something different than when you are with your children or when you're a tourist. You need something different. It means that you need to factor in the human element of traveling. Now, imagine when we were designing this new passenger, first, you don't need a ticket. You need only your biometry, because 80% of the things you do at the station, you can actually do it even before you arrive there. Why we're spending our time there, you know. When you're taking an elevator right now, you're not pushing the button anymore. You're putting a floor. Why you're doing it? Because there's an artificial intelligence that is sending you not the closest elevator, but the most efficient. Now, put the elevator horizontally, and that's what we are doing with the Hyperloop. It's a system that will connect entire cities, but at minutes distances. And we're not sending the closest capsule, we are sending the most efficient one that will serve more people with the minimum amount of time. That is all possible thanks to a technology like the blockchain. But including the fact that when you're entering in our capsule, you're able to factor in what you need. You want to sleep? Okay, I can give you the best sleep of your life. You want to work? I can give you the environment. Your chair will change to accommodate that need. You want to learn? Okay, I can give you hyper learning to actually learn something fast, because we don't have a lot of minutes inside the Hyperloop. But all the content has to be designed on what you need in that particular moment. So it's not about imagining a future that is, up there in the sky. It's imagining with the tool that we have available, designing something that we need. And that's what we are doing with the Hyperloop.
So designing something that we need, maybe this is an answer to something that we see a lot on the market. We see a lot of corporates that launch proof of concept, but it never goes, live. And do you think it's back to what you said earlier, that the problem that was tackled by the blockchain was not the right one, and it was just, a proof of concept dealing with technology, and that's all? Or do you think there are other reasons why there are so many proof of concept that stay proof of concept and we see nothing live?
For me, the more the better, because if they fail, it was bullshit. If it sticks, it means that we need it. So this is good.
Yeah, I think quick iteration is fantastic. Better to fail many times. And blockchain is sexy right now. We have all of these people here. We have all of these conferences around the world, and how many executed projects? How many, delivered products? Maybe. It's sexy, so that's fantastic because it's driving innovation, and trying things is fantastic. There's the term life is an experiment, so let's experiment. And if it works, a lot of the times we've seen that cost basis just doesn't work, or incentive structure turns out after market research, it doesn't work, or technology just doesn't work, which is okay, and that helps to direct in more informed directions.
I actually disagree. I think blockchain, again, is not a technology, and that's the reason why you do not have many pilots. It's a forcing mechanism to change processes. So you can't have an innovation when you come in and say, use blockchain. I think Pavel said earlier, what does that mean? What does that mean? Do any of you know what that means? Nobody knows what that means. So you can't do innovation in that way. So we worked backwards. We said, okay, to Bibop's point, invoices, $5 billion of trapped cash in a system. Every organization that is a multi-million-dollar organization has. Great. What are the tools to solve and uncover that trapped cash in a corporate system, right? Not blockchain. But people wanted to use blockchain to solve that, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's first understanding, what are you saying when you say blockchain? And what are you trying to do? And then ask the following questions.
Maybe one last question. What are from your views, and maybe not mention your own projects, but what fascinates you more at the time when we are talking about innovation with blockchain? I don't know, Philippe, if you have one example that you think is really incredible in terms of innovation.
Well, that will be DAOs. So definitely not something that can be built by a corporate. Well, it remains to be seen. Maybe could have surprises. But I think that the model of the firm is being challenged, let's say. It's still going to survive. But it's kind of attacked on in two ways internally, because less and less people are employed by large firms. I think that Google last year passed the threshold of only 50% of workers that being employees, and it's foreseen or forecast that it's going to be the case for most Fortune 500 in the next 2 to 3 years. So there is a lack of consistency inside firms, and they have been also challenged externally by new actors, changing the way the value chain is organized and integrating customers and suppliers in their own value chain. That's the case of the platforms. So in a way, there is a big change. And I think that there is something emerging that's called DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, that opens up a whole new way of coordinating a very large number of parties, of agents, whether those agents are people, individuals, but also companies and possibly corporate in a different ways, with less value capture and a more balanced structure of power.
I know you want to add something, Bibop.
Very quickly.
Very quickly, just because we're running out of time.
I want to add that this is a new form of government. It's a new form of company. It's a new form on how we organize society. And that's we were naturally DAO even before DAO was created, because my company worked like this. But it's the beauty of it is the possibility, the incredible possibility to unleash human potentiality. Because when you unleash the possibility for someone that is technically hired from some company to work in different projects and to, in a way, sort of tokenize their time, you solve one of the biggest problems we have. You know, when I hire someone from NASA and I take him out from NASA, I lost 70% of the reason why I was hiring him. There was NASA. And then I have to recreate NASA in my company, and it's impossible because I don't have that kind of budget, right? So unfortunately, the knowledge now is stuck in this infrastructure that we created. They are cages, and they're leveling everybody down instead of unleashing their potentiality. What we are proposing with these new models is a new society that maybe is able to share knowledge among companies, countries, even governments. And I dream for the future to be this kind of new democracy.
I've just got 2 words, privacy, and I couldn't agree with you more, DAOs. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I think if there is one word to conclude is that probably one advice for the innovation teams is really think about the purpose. About the use case, and the purpose is really about building trust and those kind of things, and not using blockchain because this is, the cool technology. Thank you very much, and